Hello and welcome to BECU Presents JA Finance Park Volunteer Training. Thank you for taking the time to watch this training video. We appreciate our volunteers and we know that the teachers and students appreciate you too. If you haven't already done so, please download or print the volunteer guide found on our website so you can follow along during your training. Junior Achievement of Washington was founded in November 2004. Originally called Enterprise Village, JA World Auburn is home to two capstone programs. Our capstone programs are the culmination of in-school lessons led by the teacher and a visit to JA World for a hands-on experience. JA World sits on land donated by Boeing. In JA BizTown, our elementary program, students will run a mini-city and are the employees, the consumers, the government, and the business owners. At JA Finance Park, for our middle and high school students, they will receive a new life scenario and will create a savings plan, budget, shop, and make payments to support their new life scenario. JA Finance Park is sponsored by 14 businesses, mostly from the Puget Sound area. We could not run this program if it were not for the financial support from these sponsors and volunteers such as yourself. We appreciate the time you are committing to watch this training video and volunteer in JA Finance Park. First of all, your role as a volunteer is to provide student guidance and assistance. When you are on-site volunteering, the students will be working on iPads, but you will not have an iPad. Secondly, you will be working with a group of 6 to 8 students, and you will facilitate group activities. Also, you will lead group discussions. The scripts for these discussions are provided for you in your guide, and I will point them out a little later in the training. Next, you will monitor student progress during the different phases of the student's JA Finance Park experience. Lastly, you will distribute the iPads and debit cards at the beginning of the day, and you will collect the iPads and debit cards at the end of the day. There is a volunteer welcome letter found on page 2 and the expectations for volunteers found on page 3 of your volunteer guide. Here are the student rules and regulations we go over when students arrive for the day. Number 1. We want to keep our park nice and clean, so all of the food and drink will be kept in our McDonald storefront. Also, if you see students chewing gum, please remind them to dispose of their gum in the garbage can inside each business. Number 2. There are a few times during the day when students will be sitting in the center of the room, and we ask them to refrain from using the restroom so they do not miss important instruction during the presentation. When they're working inside their storefront, they will be able to use the restroom. Number 3. There's an emergency exit located between McDonald's and our Chevrolet storefronts. This will take you out to the parking lot by the YMCA. Also, there are maps in each storefront to show you the way to the closest exit. Number 4. Students will not need their phones during the JA Finance Park experience. However, we know that you have lives outside of Finance Park, so if you need to make a phone call or send a text, please feel free to do so. We just ask that you step outside of JA Finance Park so you are setting a good example for our students. During the JA Finance Park experience, students will be working on iPads. Sometimes, the iPad screens freeze or a student accidentally exits out of the simulation. Here are some quick tips to help resolve any iPad technical issues. If a student accidentally closes out of the JA Finance Park simulation, they can click on the icon on the home screen and log in again. It might look like the student is starting at the beginning, but they are not. The simulation needs the student to confirm their account and PIN again. If there is an error that says network connectivity lost, the student will click OK and log in again. If the battery is running low on an iPad, please let a JA staff member know so we can replace the iPad for the student. Page 4 of your volunteer guide will provide a daily schedule. This schedule is based on a 4.5-hour visit from the school. If the school is visiting less than 4.5 hours, the research phase of the day will be shortened. Students will arrive and sit in the middle of the room while a JA staff member presents to students about setting up their iPads and calculating their savings plan. After this presentation, students will go to their assigned storefront and set up their iPads and calculate savings plans. Next, we will bring the students to the middle of the room and present on research, applying for loans, and budgeting. After this presentation, students will go back to their storefront and complete the research with you. During this phase, JA staff will announce lunch. After research, all students will apply for 3 loans and create their budget. Near the end of the day, students will join JA staff in the center of the room for one last presentation on shopping and payments. After the presentation, students will go back to their assigned storefront and shop on their iPads. Then students will make 2 types of payments, an online payment and debit card payments. At the end of the day, all students will join JA staff in the center of the room for a group debrief. At this time, please stay in your storefront until JA staff has collected all of the iPads and debit cards from you. You will start the day with students by introducing yourself. You can follow along in your volunteer guide on page 7. The first activity is introductions. This activity is designed to take about 5 minutes. We want you to get to know the students in your group. Please introduce yourself and explain your career to students, and they will introduce themselves to you. The next activity on page 7 is to discuss the model budget. This is designed to take about 2 to 3 minutes. There are laminated colored copies of the model budget inside your on-site volunteer guide. One side of the budget reflects a family with children, the other reflects a family with no children. Show the budgets to students and ask them to compare and contrast the budgets. Prior to students' visit to JA Finance Park, they have been working through 12 teacher-led lessons at school on the topics of income, savings, investing, risk management, debit and credit, and budgeting. After discussing the model budget for a few minutes with students, you will use the iPad checkout-in sheet to distribute the iPads. This activity should take 3 to 4 minutes. Students will get an iPad from the bin in each storefront, locate the account number on the back of the iPad, then write their name on the checkout-in sheet. During your visit, there might be students who are absent. So once the simulation gets started, JA staff will come collect any unused iPads from your storefront. You will use this same sheet to check in the iPads and debit cards at the end of the day. Here is an example of where students will locate their account number and PIN, personal identification number, on the iPads. The account number will be written in Sharpie on the back of the iPad case. The account number will also be found at the bottom of the debit card. These will match. Once students have checked their iPads out with you, they will log in. Logging into the iPads should take about 5 minutes. Students will enter the simulation and type in their account number and first and last name. It is important that the student types in their real first and last name, as a report is sent to their teacher at the end of the day, and the teacher needs an accurate report of the student's progress for that day. Next, students will select their gender, school, teacher, and grade from the drop-down menu. Lastly, students will enter their PIN from the back of their debit card. I would like to point out this Student View icon. Anywhere you see this icon in the training video, it shows you what the students will see on their iPad during the JA Finance Park experience. Once students have logged in, there are 6 lifestyle questions for them to answer. Answering these questions will take about 4 to 6 minutes. There are no right or wrong responses, just student opinions and preferences. They should answer the questions according to their personal thoughts or hopes for the future. The way the student answers these questions does not determine their new life scenario. Students will be assigned a new life scenario for the day. Students might have a spouse and/or children. If the student has a spouse, the spouse will work part-time, indicated with a PT, or full-time, indicated with an FT, on the left-hand side of the screen. In the white box, students will find their new job title, their age, their gross annual and monthly income before taxes, their credit score, if they have credit card or education debt, and how much they have in their retirement, emergency, and other savings. The three light green boxes at the bottom of the screen will tell students their educational background, their job responsibilities, and how they can advance in their career. On page 8 of the volunteer guide, we would like you to stop and have the students share their new life scenario with their group. This is designed to take between 5 and 8 minutes. Next, students will select an avatar. The student will click on the gray box and select an avatar that represents him or herself. Once they click on the box, a pop-up will appear to show the avatar choices available. Students can scroll down for more choices. On this screen, students will calculate their net monthly income, a skill learned prior to visiting JA Finance Park. Students will drag their taxes from the box on the right to the middle of the screen. Next, students will click on the Calculator button to calculate their net monthly income. Students will type in the equation for their gross monthly income before taxes minus their taxes on the calculator. Students must calculate the correct net monthly income to move on to the next activity. If the student has a spouse, it will automatically add their spouse's income to their household net monthly income at the bottom of the screen. After calculating their net monthly income, the iPad screen will lock so that you can have a savings discussion with students. The savings discussion can be found on pages 9 and 10 of your volunteer guide. Tell students the first budget decision they are going to make is for savings. After the discussion, students will begin to calculate their savings plan. You can begin by asking the students the questions and reading the statements found on pages 9 and 10. Please ask all the questions that start with the word ask and are in blue font. Then say all of the statements that have the word say in front of them and are in gray font. We want to emphasize paying yourself first rather than putting what's left at the end of the month into savings. You will talk about the different types of savings, retirement, emergency, and other with students. This discussion should take between 10 to 15 minutes. Please do not omit any of the questions or statements from this discussion. After you lead the savings discussion with students, give them the code found on the bottom of page 10 so they can move on to calculate their savings plan. During this phase, students will calculate 5, 10, and 15% of their household net monthly income. Students will click on the calculator button in the middle of the screen to calculate 5, 10, and 15%. After calculating the different percentages, students will decide which amount they would like to save that month. Note, some students might want to save a lot, but they will need to consider the many different categories we budget for. So encourage them to stick between the amounts of 5% and 15%. They can always change their savings plan to save more or less later. Once they have decided which amount they will save for the month, they will type that in for their total savings plan and allocate that money into their retirement, emergency, and other savings. Let's say the student decides to save $300 for the month. Then they will allocate it into 3 categories: retirement, emergency fund, and other. It is entirely up to the student on how they wish to allocate their funds into these 3 accounts. However, the 3 numbers must add up to the total savings plan for the month. Once students save their plan, they will pause for research. Please keep students inside the storefront until we call them to join us in the center of the room for another presentation. After the presentation on research, loans, and budgeting, led by JA staff, the students will be given the Research Unlock code, and the student iPads will show all the businesses they will research like this. During the research phase, students will not be able to select any items. They are only reading for information to help them make better budget decisions for their family. Each business students research on the iPad represents a category they will budget for during the budget phase. All the research budget category information can be found on pages 12 through 24 of your volunteer guide. Please note that you will not find any of the business unlock codes in your online volunteer guide. If you are volunteering for a high school group, the research phase might look a little different than what you are about to see. Please see JA staff the day of your visit regarding the research phase, if you are volunteering for a high school group only. Here is the research phase procedure. First of all, you will start research in your home storefront. You will then rotate with your student group to each storefront to research. Next, you will use the talking points we provide in each business to give information about each budget category, and we encourage you to share your own personal examples. After using the talking points with students, you will give the students the business ID code to unlock the budget category. Lastly, the students will read the budget category information on the iPad to you and engage in questions and discussion until it is time to rotate, which will be announced by JA staff. When you enter a business, you will want to locate the laminated sheet with all of the discussion topics and the unlock code. In the middle of the research path page, you will find bullet points of discussion topics for students. Read the bullet points of information to the students before giving the unlock code. When you are reading the information to students, you will want to share your own personal experiences as well. For example, you can read the following information to students. Students will decide if they will eat lunch out during the work week or brown bag it. They don't have to purchase lunch. Here, you can share with students if you eat out multiple times a week or bring your own lunch to work. If you stay home during the work week, you could share if you make your own lunch or have lunch delivered several times a week. After reading through the bullet points of information, please give students the unlock code at the bottom of the page. Here is an example of McDonald's dining out on the iPad. Once the students unlock the budget category, they will see a pop-up box with a focus question for that budget category. The students will read the information, then click OK. Next, students will see more information about the budget category. Some businesses have a click here for more info button. When the student clicks there, it will show pictures related to each budget category. During the research phase, JA staff will announce lunch. There will be 1 to 3 lunch sessions, and that will be determined by the student group size. Please see the front pocket of your volunteer guide on the day of your visit to see which lunch you have been assigned. Once lunch is announced, students will place their iPads back in their home storefront before heading to grab their lunch and eat in McDonald's. We are a nonprofit, and it is our responsibility to be good citizens. We ask that all students and volunteers compost and recycle while visiting JA Finance Park. There is a green compost bin for your food scraps only, and a blue recycle bin for your clean recyclables inside McDonald's where you and the students will be eating lunch. After lunch and research is complete, students will apply for 3 loans: a home loan and an auto loan at the credit union, also an auto loan at the dealership. To apply for their loans, students will enter the unlock code and click on Apply for Loan. Then they will tap to fill all the green boxes and they will submit their applications. The students will not find out if their loans are approved until the shopping phase. After unlocking all 25 categories, students will create their budget. The simulation will not allow students to create their budget until all their loans are applied for and all the research categories have been unlocked. Here is an example budget. Each budget is based on the student's net monthly income. The first column shows all of the budget categories. The second column shows the minimum recommended guideline that the student will use to budget for this category. The third column shows the maximum recommended guideline that the student will use to budget for each category. The last column is where students will type the amount they are choosing to budget for each category. Some categories will be filled in for students already. Those categories are savings and education or credit card payments. Students must pay the minimum monthly payment but are welcome to pay more in those 2 categories. Here are a few tips for budgeting. These tips can be found on page 25 of your volunteer guide. Budget for needs first before wants. If the student runs out of money before the budget is complete in each category, they must take money out of another category to make sure that all of the budget categories are filled. If a student has extra money, they can allocate their leftover money to any category. We encourage students to put that extra money in their BECU savings, pay off their Wells Fargo credit card, or housing, etc. Students must allocate 100% of their net monthly income to their budget. They should have $0 left to allocate before they can save their budget. Note: once they have confirmed their budget, they cannot go back and make changes to their budget choices. Once students save their budget, they will pause for shopping and payments. Please keep students inside the storefront until we call for them to join us in the center of the room again. After the shopping and payments presentation, JA staff will give students the shopping unlock code. This code will unlock the shopping and payment phases. Shopping instructions, hints, and reminders can be found on pages 26 to 27 of your volunteer guide. Here, students will see a similar screen to research with all the business icons. Below each category, it will either say Shopping Not Done or Shopping Not Required. Students need to go into each area that says Shopping Not Done to make their shopping selections. During the shopping phase, students will decide what type of house they will live in, if they will purchase organic brand groceries or generic brand groceries, if they would like to save for vacation that month, or how much they would like to pay for life and disability insurance. Here is an example of shopping for dining out on the iPad. Along the top of the screen is the budget bar that shows how much the student budgeted for each category, their NMI, how much money they have spent, and how much money they have remaining to spend. Here the student will decide how many times a month they will eat out, who is eating out, and what type of meal they will be eating. As the student starts to spend, their budget bar will stay green if they have spent less than their budget. If the student spends more than their budget, the budget bar will turn red, and a warning will appear to let the student know they are spending more than their budget, and that is okay as long as they spend less than their budget in another category. If at any point during shopping the student doesn't remember something about their persona, for example, if they have children or how old their children are, they can click on the life scenario icon at the top of their iPad screen. Groceries are based on the number of people in their household, so they might need to look back at their life scenario. Childcare is also based on the child's age. During shopping, students will invest in either stocks, mutual funds, or both. Students select their investments for each account, retirement and emergency, by adjusting the toggle bars. When they move one bar, the other will move accordingly to add up to 100% automatically. Students will also find out whether they were approved for their home loan or auto loan during the shopping phase. When students shop for their housing and transportation categories, a pop-up box will show on their screen if they were approved for their home loan, auto loan, or not approved. If they were not approved for either of their loans, they will need to rent a home and take public transportation. Students may not have to shop in some categories. For example, single adults without children will not have to shop for childcare. You can find the shopping tips and reminders in your volunteer guide on page 27. Students will need to make sure that all the budget categories say shopping done before moving on to the payment phase. During the payment phase, students will make two types of payments. The first is called a group online payment. This is where all the online payments will appear on their iPad screen with each business button showing the amount and orange words saying "to be paid." Students will tap on each business and the words will change from "to be paid" to "will be paid." The amount to be paid turns green. Once all the buttons are tapped, students will click on the green Confirm Online Payment button at the bottom right-hand corner of their iPad. The final step for students will be to confirm their online payment. The pop-up will summarize all payments that are to be made and their sum total. The second type of payment that students will make will be with their debit cards, located on the back of their iPad. Remember, each debit card is magnetized with the student's account information, and it is very important that students have the right debit card. Debit card payment stations are located in Nordstrom, JA Grocery and Housing, Alaska Airlines, and Chevrolet. To make debit card payments, students will walk around to each business with their debit card. They will click on the business they want to pay on their iPad first, then click on the icon on the computer screen. The computer will prompt the student to swipe their debit card through the card reader and enter their PIN, which is found on the back of the debit card. Once the student swipes their card and enters their PIN, the iPad will tell them that their transaction was successful. After students have made all of their payments, they will answer the lifestyle questions again. Students might have the same answer as before, or their answers may be different. We encourage students to be honest when answering these lifestyle questions. After answering the lifestyle questions, a student budget review report will appear on their iPad. They will bring their iPad to a JA staff member. This is the report that we will also email to teachers at the end of the day. After JA staff reviews the student budget report with students, they will turn their iPad back into their volunteer. Make sure to check all the iPads and debit cards in on the white iPad check-in page that was used to check out the iPads to students at the beginning of the day. Next, students will fill out a JA reflection form. When each student has finished filling out their reflection form, they will return to your business, and you can ask them questions found on page 29 of your volunteer guide to bring closure to their JA Finance Park experience. At the very end of the day, JA staff will lead a whole group brief discussion, and students will be dismissed. When you arrive to volunteer, please be prepared and flexible. Here are a few reminders before you visit JA Finance Park. Please bring a sack lunch. There's no time to go out to eat during your short lunch break. We do have a refrigerator and microwave on site that can be used during your visit. Please wear your name tag when you are on site volunteering, because the safety of our students is our highest priority. Once students arrive, we do lock our front doors and have any visitors show ID and sign in at the front desk. Please keep your personal belongings to a minimum. It is your responsibility to keep track of your personal belongings, and we do not have any secure area to keep them. You can keep your personal belongings in your storefront with you or inside McDonald's storefront on the countertops. If you plan on taking your child home with you after your JA Finance Park experience, please check with your child's teacher first. Again, we thank you for taking time to volunteer at JA Finance Park. Please arrive at least 20 minutes before the school is scheduled to arrive. This will give you time to check in at the front desk, get your assigned business, go into JA Finance Park to review the volunteer guide, and enjoy coffee or tea. At the end of this training video, please proceed to Step 2, filling out the volunteer registration form, which can be found on our website. It is very important that you take the time to fill out the volunteer registration form after watching the training video so that we can inform the teacher how many volunteers have been trained. We cannot run JA Finance Park without our volunteers, and the teachers work very hard to coordinate the correct number of volunteers for their visit date. When you complete the online registration form, you will have the opportunity to donate to Junior Achievement. It takes $50 to send a student through JA Finance Park, yet the student fee the school pays is only $15. The school's fee per student is 70% lower than the cost to run JA Finance Park, and some schools are not able to pay at all. Please consider making a monetary donation to Junior Achievement in conjunction with your volunteer hours to offset the cost for students and schools who may otherwise miss out on this great opportunity. Your contribution might be the first step on the ladder of success for a young person today, and we truly appreciate you. Thank you very much for serving as a volunteer during this impactful experience for students.